We've got an additional 5 cases on top of that that have come in this morning that we haven't had time to get detailed information on, so I won't be able to speak to those. So always there's a difference between the number that we have up on our site versus the additional cases that come in the morning, and I pick up on those additional cases the following day when I report. The age profile is much the same as before, with the predominance of people in their mid-years, 35 to 64. A full range of individuals, ranges of individuals as well, including 16 that are 65 and older. We now have 17 individuals who've recovered. One of those individuals had been hospitalized. The rest of them had come out of self-isolation. There was a question yesterday about the individuals that have been in hospital and whether any of them had recovered or not. So to date we've had 15 individuals who have been in hospital, 10 remain in hospital, 1 has resolved as I've indicated, and 4 have passed away. We have 35 people in self-isolation right now. We have, as I said, 10 that remain in hospital, 4 that have deceased. In terms of where people have contracted their infection, 33 are travel related, 12 are close contacts, 19 are community acquired, 2 are under investigation. I think what's most important is that more recently we're shifting very much in the direction of community acquired cases being the most recent. So when we look at our 9 new cases from yesterday, we see that the majority of those are community acquired. Only 2 of them are travel related. 1 is under investigation. The rest are, 1 is a close contact and the rest are community acquired. So the majority are community acquired. Back to the importance of people being aware that this is transmitting in the community. You have to take your precautions. People have to exercise their physical distancing, 2 meters away from other individuals, thinking carefully about whether or not you really need to go out, avoiding crowds, frequent hand washing, and certainly if you develop any symptoms of respiratory illness, that you need to be self-isolating in your home, monitoring yourself, and if you develop severe symptoms, seeking medical attention, or if you're a healthcare worker or are in or work in a long-term care facility, or live in a remote community or are from a First Nations community, that testing would be indicated as well to determine whether or not you're positive for COVID-19. If you look at our epidemiological curve, perhaps we're starting to see the upward rise. Certainly having 9 cases come in over the last 24 hours is noteworthy. That's the most we've had come in one day, and it is at this time that we're expecting the rise in cases, the surge of cases due to community transmission. This is the point at which we most definitely need to be exercising our precaution about transmission, about keeping our distance from people, to avoid becoming cases ourselves, avoid transmitting to other people, but we will indeed continue to see a rise. Our objective is to flatten that curve as much as possible so that it is manageable and doesn't overwhelm the healthcare system, but we do expect to see a rise over the weeks to come, and we do expect this situation to transpire over months to come. So I think people need to think in terms of the importance of being able to do this over a long period of time, being able to manage this situation over a long period of time. If you look at our most recent cases, just scrolling down here to the bottom of them, We have an age range that goes from the 20s to the 70s. We have 2 individuals that are in Muskoka. The other individuals are in communities in Simcoe County. I've already spoken to the predominance of community acquisition. The individuals that have come in over the last 24 hours, fortunately, none of them are hospitalized. They're all in self-isolation. Just making sure that I've covered off the major bases here. Okay. There are a number of questions that arose yesterday. One of them was with regards to the volume of testing that's happening and a comparison of Simcoe County versus the District of Muskoka, a concern that the District of Muskoka, there wasn't as much testing happening. Our 2 assessment centers in Muskoka opened yesterday, and that should help with that, but there is still a difference. I said I would report back on what we're seeing in the way of testing and the testing rate, and indeed the difference that we saw before still persists, with more testing happening in Simcoe County compared with Muskoka. 24 tests per 10,000 population in Simcoe County, 18.8 tests per 10,000 population in Muskoka, and that is statistically significant, that difference. I think given that it started that way, it'll probably take some time before Muskoka could catch up with Simcoe. They've only just had their assessment centers open up yesterday. A few points I would raise and get into some questions that have arisen. So Easter is coming up, Easter holiday is coming up. Of course, we normally get together with family and friends for the occasion. This is not a normal year. This is a year in which we need to all be doing our part to avoid transmission, and that means connecting with people from a distance, using distance technology, not getting together with people, really respecting the restrictions that the provincial government has put in place about no more than 5 people gathering, and much preferable that only household members are together and not other individuals who could introduce infection among those in your household. This, of course, is extremely difficult because it's Easter, after all, that's coming up, and other religious occasions, Passover as well. I just really emphasize the importance of people doing things differently this year, connecting with people from a distance instead. We've got new information on our website for parents-to-be, links to support for emotional wellness, a link to 211 Ontario as a resource, a support line, Kids Help phone. We realize that these restrictions are hard on people, that the social isolation that this creates is very hard on people and on their well-being, and so we're trying to provide distance technology connection means to mitigate those impacts. And I would just encourage people to take advantage of their communication technology to stay connected with others and keep up your social networks, because it's so important for your well-being, and to reach out to others for assistance through this kind of distance technology means to help address your needs and your issues, or to use 211 in order to obtain groceries and other needs that you may have. Questions come up about use of masks. That's certainly playing with high profile in the media, and I would say that masks are important for healthcare provision, and we're providing guidance to our healthcare providers and facilities about the use of masks with patient encounters and with higher risk procedures in healthcare, and they play a role for the provision of care in the home of a case. So anyone in the household that's providing care for a case or having close interaction within 2 meters, a mask certainly would be beneficial to reduce their risk of transmission, but we are not recommending that people use masks for general use out in the community, that you instead use the physical distancing measures that I've spoken to, the setback of 2 meters from other individuals, avoidance of crowds, frequent hand washing, not going out if you're unwell. There's no evidence that a mask would give an additional benefit beyond those things. If you're doing those things, you are safe, and a mask is not going to help you any further with those situations. And furthermore, there is a shortage of masks right now, and we need to conserve those for the high-risk healthcare situations that our healthcare professionals engaging in their work. We've got some other questions here, just having a look at. There was a question about hospitalized cases and how many have recovered, which I've spoken to. There was a question about a case who had worked at Beaver Creek. That individual actually lives out of the area in the North Bay Parry Sound catchment. We've identified close contacts for that individual in our area and have followed up with them, and there has been no indication of transmission at that facility itself. Just making sure I've covered all the bases here. So, question here about Easter celebrations, advice that we would give. I've already spoken to the fact that people need to be connected from afar and otherwise just stick to your present household members. Somebody says if it's 5 or less people, can they get together? Like, for example, my daughter and her husband have 2 children, both their family, and my husband and I have been strictly adhering to social distancing for 2 weeks. Is it acceptable for us to get together for Easter dinner? And my answer would be much preferable that you not, because you could become a case through contact with those individuals. It's very important to realize that transmission is happening now in our community, that you don't know who's a case and who's not. Often they can be asymptomatic, particularly young people, particularly children, yet transmissible to others. And so by getting together in that way, you take on the risk that you become a case by them, or it's possible you could transmit to them. Recommending strongly that instead you use distance technology to be in contact with them. And then a question here about what would you classify as immediate family? And I would suggest household members. Stick with your household members, the people that you have in your home right now, rather than connecting broadly with many other people out in your broader family network. So I think I've covered the bases for today. And so I guess one more thing I would say about Spencer House, we've had no indication as yet of other sick individuals associated with that facility. We just had the one individual that became a case who had worked there while communicable, but we're monitoring that situation very closely. We have no evidence that others have contracted this as yet. So I'm happy to take questions at this time.
All right, we'll start with Erica.
Hi, I'm wondering, case number 44, an oral vaginal person that's hospitalized. Can you tell me what hospital they're staying at?
Just having a look.
Yep.
I'm afraid okay, Soldiers Memorial Hospital.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And yesterday I asked about the provincial medical officer's health memo about more aggressive contact tracing. Have you had more time to consider that, and have you changed anything about the way that local public health is doing contact tracing?
So we are aggressively contact tracing. The memo, I think, really referred to our ability to issue orders, including the potential to use a Section 22 order under the Health Protection and Promotion Act for a class of individuals. And the medical officer of health in the City of Toronto issued such an order to all individuals who had been identified as cases and contacts, requiring them to remain in self-isolation for the duration that they've been told to do so by public health. I know that a number of other medical officers of health were considering doing that, and consulting with my staff who manage this situation, we've had a high degree of compliance among our cases and contacts. So we're not proceeding with that action at this time. We may choose to do so in the future if we deem it necessary or feel that it would have added value in protecting the public if we feel that there's been evidence of non-compliance. This is actually, I think, a slightly different thing from compliance with the requirements of the Quarantine Act for people that return from out of Canada, and there you already have legislation in place with penalties by the federal government to enforce that those individuals remain in self-isolation for their 14-day period.
Thank you. Dawn?
Hi, Dr. Gardner.
Hello.
I have two questions for you. The first is regarding the latest Simcoe case. Do you have any further details that you can share, such as date of testing or anything else?
Well, I would say that there was a one-day lag in the testing and that it was recent at the end of March. 1 day lag between the test being drawn and the result coming back.
Follow-up question, Dawn?
I do. And regarding the difference in testing numbers between Simcoe County and Muskoka, when you had reported those previously, you mentioned that you weren't seeing all of the cases, so some may not have been included in those numbers. Is that still the case, or are you now seeing reports from not just the public health unit, but anywhere else that testing is being completed?
There were new laboratories coming online with hospitals in the Greater Toronto area, and my understanding is that that's being expanded even further. For each of those, we need to follow up and make sure that we're getting that data. I don't actually know the status of that, but I will get back to you with that information. I'll do that tomorrow.
Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you.
We'll go on to Doug.
Well, so when we're looking at frontline health workers who are completing their work day and returning to their homes, if they're following the protocols at work, are they good to go at home, or should there be heightened protocols within their home, how their families interact with it? That spreads through care workers at long-term care homes, that type of thing. Is there going to be a heightened awareness around families of frontline health workers?
I would say that we're all at risk now, that we all need to be practicing the frequent hand washing and self-monitoring, that it's transmitting in the community and not necessarily just in healthcare, or that the risk isn't there, just there. So that's something I would recommend for us all. I would say that if a healthcare worker has had a high-risk contact or a medium-level risk contact, that we're, of a case that's tested, we're going to be in touch with them and advise them specifically about what they need to do. If it's a high-risk contact, then they would need to go into isolation, and there would need to be precautions taken for the rest of the family. That individual should really be isolated from them too, and maintaining that 2-meter distance in their own room and their own washroom, and eating separately. If they're medium risk contact, then they should be self-monitoring. But then again, we all should be self-monitoring at this point because of the risk of transmission happening right now in the community. So I think it depends on the situation, but in general, I would say that healthcare workers need to self-monitor, as we all need to self-monitor.
And my second question, with the Pines and with what's happened in Bob's case, is special attention being shown in terms of just what's happening in there? Does that sort of get put to a different level of attention?
We're putting a lot of attention into all of our long-term care facilities, certainly those that have outbreaks. We have not had a positive result come back on the Pine or any other long-term care facility. The only positive result associated with one was the Spencer House, and that was a worker and not other individuals, not the residents in the facility as yet. We're on the high alert. Those facilities are on high alert. We do know that the risk is high for them all, and aggressively testing and investigating any of them that have an outbreak, including the Pines.
Excellent. Thanks much. Have a good day.
You too.
Thank you. Nathan Schubert.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I just wanted to clarify something you said earlier. Going into Easter, and so you're saying that people who are not in the immediate household should not be going home, correct?
Yes, it's a risk for you to take family members in. It's not prohibited, but it is a risk because they could be asymptomatic cases, and you could be as an asymptomatic case. You're just increasing the probability of transmission.
Great. Yeah, no, I think that's it for me.
Thanks. Brett Glover.
Thank you. I just want to circle back to something Dr. Yu had said yesterday, that COVID could return in the fall. And then some folks asking if this could be a seasonal thing. Are we going to have to practice physical distancing 3 months out of the year?
I feel eventually we'll get a vaccine, and that will be the ultimate solution. We do know that that's going to take, they say, a year and a half out or more. And I feel that in the interim, we're likely to see this virus recurring, circling back, potentially impacting on us. There's the very real potential that we're going, until that day that we get a vaccine and we get protection of the population, that we'll have to exercise these kinds of precautions. It may very well be that it will wax and wane over time, and that the kind of restrictions can be relaxed for a time and then reinstituted as it comes back. We'll just have to, I think, take it as it comes and see how it actually transpires. But the kind of scenario I'm describing is a real possibility. It is in keeping with the mathematical modeling that we've seen to try and project ahead and look at how it could play out.
All right, thank you. You actually addressed my second question as well. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, the second Nathan.
Hi there. Hi, Dr. Gardner.
Hello.
Sorry, I was on speaker. You had mentioned yesterday that the person who was working at Spencer House was infectious while working, and I'm just wondering how long this person was working there while infectious, and if the worker knew he or she was infectious at the time.
So, in the interest of privacy, I wouldn't be getting into too much detail about that. I would say that it was more than a day, less than a week in which that had happened.
Any follow-up, Nathan?
Yes. Do you know how many residents this person was in contact with at Spencer House while infectious?
I don't have a specific figure on that, I'm afraid. We are monitoring the entire facility very closely.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
James.
Yes, thank you. Just a quick note, Dr. Gardner, thank you for addressing the Beaver Creek update. Appreciate it. My first question is just a little bit more in depth on the on the 2 cases from Muskoka. Just specifically wondering about the Muskoka Lakes case. It says under investigation. Are there any more details you can give us right now on that?
I'm afraid not. It's under investigation. I don't have more detail.
Okay, and the Huntsville one, I just wanted to clarify, it said close contact. Do we know who she was in close contact with that she was infected? Was it somebody that traveled? Was it a community infection?
So we do know that. Just having a look at my notes here. Please bear with me. It was close contact of somebody with a community transmission, I believe, from my notes.
And just the second question I have, again about the Huntsville case, you did tell Don that it was a 1-day turnaround on that testing. Now, last week you were saying it was about 6 days, so does that mean that the backlog of testing has eased up a bit?
It has eased up a great deal. The province is now doing 5,000 tests a day. They've dramatically shortened down the backlog, and so what we're seeing here is that tests are taking 1 to 2 days when I look down the list. Much better.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, and Mandy.
Hi, Dr. Gardner. You just actually answered one of my questions. It was about the lag in testing. It's approximately, you said 1 to 2 days now, so that's kind of the lag in our numbers. I'm assuming that as well.
It's the lag. Yeah, I guess that would be a good way of putting it. When somebody's been tested, how long will it be before we find out? It'd be 1 to 2 days.
Well, awesome. A couple more questions. Specifically about the person who had recovered after being hospitalized. Where do they go from there? Do they go home with their families? Do they have to stay in isolation? Do they get a checkup or tested again?
If they fully recovered, they are at home, and they would return to the care of their family physician.
But they wouldn't have a COVID-19 test again after that to see if they could re-get it, basically?
That kind of asks, it's almost 2 questions in one. Is there a possibility that a person doesn't have some protection, or do they have protection post-infection? We don't really know for sure. We believe that they would have protection at least for a time. We don't know how long. It's a new disease. Some diseases you don't retain protection for more than a few months. Influenza is like that. And the other question would be, what kind of testing is required of people to allow them to come out of isolation? And that depends on who they are. If they are a healthcare worker, then they require 2 tests done 24 hours apart post-recovery, both of those tests being negative before they'd be considered free to come out of isolation. Same with somebody that's in the hospital. They require that kind of testing to come out of isolation in the hospital if they're still hospitalized. And for other individuals, it's 14 days from the onset of symptoms and a complete recovery of symptoms before they would be allowed to come out of isolation and be considered recovered.
Great, thank you. And one more question. I'm not sure if you'll have this information on hand, but do we have a comparison of people who died from the regular flu in Simcoe, Muskoka each year compared to what we're seeing with COVID so far?
I don't have that data. I don't have that data offhand, but I would say we've had 4 deaths. They've all been older individuals, above the age of 70, with pre-existing medical conditions, and that would be consistent with influenza as well. One major difference, I would say, between influenza, the age profile for influenza and COVID-19 is that the very young can also be severely affected by influenza, and that doesn't appear to be the case with COVID-19. It seems to be very much sparingly young, apart from those that might have pre-existing medical conditions. They can certainly be infectious to other people, but when it comes to complications, it's been clustered much more in the elderly and those with pre-existing medical conditions. There have been younger cases severely affected, and we've seen that in Simcoe, Muskoka. People have needed to be hospitalized as young as in their 30s. But the major difference in the profile would be that influenza can be very severe in the very young, and COVID-19 appears not to be.
Interesting. Do we keep track of those numbers, though, each year who dies from influenza? In Simcoe, Muskoka specifically?
It's a reportable disease, but which means that we get reported cases. But the great majority of cases are never tested for influenza, so we would only see the tip of the iceberg. Now, I would say that's going to be true, too, of COVID-19. We probably have 10 or 20 times as many cases in the community as we've got reported to us, have been tested and reported to us. So hence my advice, consider this transmitting in the community, consider that people you come in contact could be cases, and therefore exercise the physical distancing of 2 meters and wash your hands, stay away from crowds, isolate if you're ill.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, do we have anyone else join after we started?
Yeah, sorry, I'm here, Andrew from Simcoe.com.
Hello, Andrew. Go ahead.
Could I just a couple questions about the new cases in Innisfil and Barrie that are community acquired. Could you provide any more details on those as to where they might have come in contact with the virus, or if they're connected to any businesses or locations?
We don't give specific information of that nature unless there is a substantial contact and we're unable to identify the individuals directly and approach them directly. And I think it's also misleading for people anyway. There's this, I think, underlying belief that if you only know the few places where this has happened, you can avoid them, or the few people who have this, you can avoid them and you're going to be okay, and that's not true. It's much safer to assume you don't know, that it's common in the community that you cannot tell by looking at a person whether or not they're a case, and therefore you need to exercise physical distancing in all instances with all people as you go out in the community.
Okay, so people should see these cases as kind of a sign that the community spreading is spiking or rising?
It's not spiking. I think it may go on yet before it truly spikes, levels out, and eventually drops. I think we need to think in terms of months. So we're very much on the rise at this point. I don't think we're near the peak yet, unless we're very fortunate, but I don't see signs of that yet. So people should consider that it's there, it's in the community, and they need to take their precautions.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, that's all the reporters I've listed on the call, Dr. Gardner.
Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Here we are at the Temple Lounge in downtown Barrie at Donnelly's, and I am sitting with Mr. Brett Caswell. Good to see you, brother. It has been a while. Yeah. Good to see you. So let's go back a little bit, if you don't mind, in history.
Yeah.
What brought you to Barrie, or are you from Barrie originally? Is this home ground, or?
I grew up in my younger years. I was born in Scarborough and lived there until I was 9. Came to Barrie in grade 4, the beginning of grade 4. yeah. So, but yeah, so really, like the good chunk of my life.
Yeah.
Barrie.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Now, musically, I always find it interesting to find out at what stage of life people actually got into music. Were your parents involved with music, or did you get started voluntarily at a young age? Or
It's yeah, it's almost a mystery, like, because there's not really any background in my family.
Okay.
Apparently, I guess my grandfather played harmonica a little bit, and that was the extent of it. My father didn't really sing or play anything. My mom doesn't sing or have any pitch, you know. So I don't know what happened, man. But so in grade 8, oh no, they put me in piano lessons. That's what happened. In grade 7, we all had to go through piano. My sister did it, my brother did it, and then I had to do it. You know, old cranky old lady, you know, those kind of lessons.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I got a guitar from my uncle. He gave me a guitar around 12 years old or so, and it was over. That was it. That was a shift for me, like life changing. But again, I don't know where it came from, which is the original question.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know, man.
I guess that you don't really need it's happening.
No, I'm
It's
thankful
happened.
for it. Yeah,
exactly. It is all good.
Yeah.
It is all good. No, that's awesome. So you're originally from Toronto. So how did you end up in Barrie per se? Like,
All right. My dad, he was an elevator repairman for Otis Elevators, and he was in Scarborough, but we got transferred up to Simcoe County. So yeah, he serviced everywhere up here, and Barrie ended up being our home. I think Barrie was possibly our home because of hockey, because we were very into hockey when I was younger, and I got a feeling maybe we chose Barrie out of all the Simcoe County areas for hockey.
Yeah. Well, Barrie's always had a
That's just
solid
it.
background.
Yeah. So if I had to, I've had to think about that. It's probably because of hockey. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Now we go back a few years as well. I remember I'm going to date myself here and date you as well, unfortunately.
Yeah,
but,
that's all right.
probably I'm thinking probably about 15, 16 years ago, maybe even a little bit longer. You had a band called Trigger Incident, which many people in Barrie in this area may not know about. Tell me a little bit more about Trigger Incident.
Yeah, and that one's like there's even a couple that we've breezed over.
So
That's okay, but let's go. Trigger Incident was a really fun band. It was at a time in my life where I needed to get some anger out. Because the band before that was quite a lot happier. We were singing love songs and in major keys, you know, like and then had a breakup, you know, and it ruined me, and I was angry, and I needed to get it out. So my way of getting it was starting a progressive, I don't know what you call it.
Yeah,
it was kind of progressive, you know.
I would say, yeah.
Metal-ish in that genre. I don't know. Anyways, yeah, that was my way of getting it out. So Trigger Incident was spawned from a really angry Brett. And luckily I have some insanely talented friends, and I recruited Leland Bermania, who now plays in the Indian Handcrafts.
That's right.
And Brian Lake was on the drums.
That's right.
He's still a dear friend of mine.
Yep.
And then Evan Rosevere, who I'm not in touch with as much anymore, but he was an incredible bass player, studied at Humber. Anyways, yeah, that was the band. That was Trigger Incident.
Yeah. No, it was. I thought it was a great band.
It was a great band.
It seemed like you were here, and all of a sudden you weren't there anymore.
Yes, and that was the anger. Yeah, before Trigger Incident was a band called Fight Like Gentlemen.
Okay,
Actually started as Junior. And that was with my friend Tony Cervello, Dave Murray, and Rob Drake. Rob Drake is still my musical brother. So yeah, Junior, and then Junior changed the name to Fight Like Gentlemen, and we were just a little poppy. It was still kind of progressive, actually. Like we like to mess with our arrangements, but it was definitely happier sounding. And then I got angry and started doing the darker stuff. Yeah.
But happier days were ahead.
Easy come, easy go, whichever way the wind blows. Gotta hold on to what you got before it's gone. Where you think you wanna be is never as it seems. The lights change, but those shadows, they still remain. What is it you think you want? Don't Don't you know curiosity always kills the cat? Where the grass is always greener on the other side. No matter what side of the fence that you stand upon. If you could only see over the other side, well, you know it's not all that it is cracked up to be. Should you stay or should you go? That age-old question we all want to know. Well, the answer lies only within your heart. Just be here right now, 'cause there's no other place you need to be. At your fingertips lies happiness and beyond, where the grass is always greener on the other side. Yeah, no matter what side of the fence that you stand upon. And if you could only see over the other side, well, you know it's not all that it is cracked up to be. An opportunity comes knocking at your door. No need to answer, you don't need her anymore. You've got everything right where it needs to be. Easy come, easy go, whichever way the wind blows. You've got to hold on to what you've got before it's gone. Where the grass is always greener on the other side. Oh, no matter what side of the fence that you stand upon. And if you could only see over the other side, you know it's not all that it is cracked up to be.
Transforming from the rock and roll, and you said it was a bit of a lyrically, obviously you had some things that you were getting out.
Yes.
Now, when you went from the rock and roll thing to solo acts, because you were basically when people say, "Oh, I'm going downtown to Kensington's or to Donnelly's or wherever," you're kind of a staple downtown, British Arms, wherever. You're like the guy that, "Oh, I'm going downtown." There's a good chance you're going to run into Brett Caswell. Are you still gigging the solo stuff as much? And did you enjoy that more than the rock and roll thing, or?
Oh, man.
Sorry, tough question.
Loaded question. I did. I was that guy for sure downtown for 10 years probably, man. And that started the gigs, doing the cover thing, and the started out of necessity, needing to pay bills because I had a son. And writing original music and playing it on the road and in bars was not really paying the bills. So playing some cover songs paid the bills. That's how that got started, I guess, really. That's kind of how the solo thing, solo acoustic thing got started, out of necessity. And boy, oh boy, did I drive that to the ground.
Yeah.
I played every one of these places in Barrie too many times, I think. because now I can't do it anymore.
However, on a good note, we are here
Yes.
sitting talking about this.
This is right.
So let's fast forward a little bit to where we are now, and especially in this place, the temple, because this is your home.
The Temple
for
Lounge, yes.
the choir.
Yeah, it is.
This has been such a phenomenal, what's the word, diversion as to what you've done in the past.
Yeah.
How did this whole concept come about with the choir? It is really unique. I think for Barrie anyway, it's a very unique and a wonderful opportunity to get the community involved. But, so how did that idea, that concept come to reality?
Actually, very similar to Trigger Incident, how that was born from an angry place. The choirs are born not from an angry place, but a darker place. Those gigs I mentioned earlier kind of drove me into a bit of a deep dark depression. It was a hole for sure. And the choirs helped me get out of that. The choirs are born from needing to find joy in music again, and yeah, and that's what happened there, man. It was I had to get, for some reason, my life had to go pretty dark for these choirs to happen. So I'm thankful that I got there, I guess, in a weird way. You know, I'm thankful that I had to go through all that pain. Yeah, so that's how the choirs were born, from that.
So with that, getting to the point, how did you get the people to come to the masses? How did you bring the choir concept to the Temple Lounge here at Donnelly's? Was it taking your idea and then marketing it through there? Do you know what I mean? Has it been, how did you get to this choir happening at this point?
That's a good question. Well, really, first and foremost, the idea isn't original, right? I'm kind of borrowing from Choir in Toronto.
Yep.
If you haven't seen their videos, check them out, because holy smokes, they do some incredible things. And they have a really simple format, and it works really well. You don't need to read music to be able to do what we do in this choir. It's all by ear. And so I used I came up with the concept, I borrowed the concept, and then just used social media as my tool. You know, that was pretty much it. And word of mouth. Started small. There was some nights where there was only 15 of us maybe, and now we're up to anywhere from 40 to 55 people in a night, maybe. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think it's a cool concept. It's wicked. How do you choose which song you're going to perform? Is it a kind of a popularity vote, or do you just think this is a kind of a classic song that everyone will know? Yeah, for the most part, like I'm trying to keep them accessible at this point. I'm sure maybe down the road we'll get into some B-sides maybe. Yeah. But right now, keeping them accessible. I do spend hours and hours researching, and because even if a song is accessible, doesn't mean it's necessarily choirable. You know, it might not. It might be an awesome song that everybody knows, but it won't necessarily make a good choir song. Yeah. And the cool thing about it too is that it's open to all ages. Yeah. It's what kind of a demographic are you getting with these shows? Well, the one that we do here, we run these on Tuesday nights here at Donnelly's, and those are just adults. So that one, it doesn't have to be 19 plus, but it tends to be, and it tends to even be even a bit of an older crowd. But I also run 2 not-for-profit kids choirs as well out of Homestead Bakery, and those are on Mondays. Okay, cool. So that's actually the adult one is set up to help fund the not-for-profits. So everybody who comes in here on a night pays a $10 donation, and that goes to help fund the kids choirs. Gotcha. Yeah, man. Nice. Now, you talked a little bit about mental illness, and as an artist and as a musician, from a crowd perspective, they don't understand really what's going on behind the scenes and the battles that, like everyone else, faces, whether it's physical, mental, whatever. And musicians tend to, I found anyway, we deal with things differently. Some put out lyrically, some use whatever means they need to disguise their pain or their troubles before they go on stage. With your mental illness, how do you deal with it? Do you find it a combination of writing, or is it dealing with it in other ways? For me, the choir, I guess, has been a huge part of my therapy. Making arrangements is kind of my new writing. Making these choir arrangements. I don't work on my own music a whole lot these days. I don't have time. I'm busy making a lot of choir arrangements, but I'm working all the same
you know, the same parts of my brain. It feels like I'm writing a song almost when I make an arrangement. When I finish it, I get that same feeling of like, you know what I mean? That kind of proud moment where like, you know, you finish something.
Yeah.
And so I get all the same feelings with writing music. I get that from making choir arrangements, yeah, which is pretty neat actually. Yeah, so what was the original question?
Yeah, so with mental illness and with being a musician,
Yeah, so choir helps, and actually performing isn't really, I had some panic attacks on stage through this mental illness, and so performing has been an issue actually. Actually, once I got off this stuff, this, so you know, is non-alcoholic. I don't use the booze anymore. No, after I got off alcohol, I tried to keep playing shows and it wasn't working. Like when I wasn't on the same level as the rest of the bar and everybody else is getting wasted. I ended up panicking on stage and realized I can't do this anymore. Holy smokes.
How do you deal with a panic attack on stage?
I do it like, luckily it was in between sets, like, so I just packed up and left. Like didn't even say bye to the bar, nothing, just booked it. Yeah, so playing on music live isn't really, doesn't really work for me at this point in my life, but that's being worked through. I guess just the bar gigs, because I still do the songwriter series, and that's a lovely gig. But everybody's sitting, you know, everybody's listening, and it's a bit of a different style of a gig. And exercise is huge for me, man. Exercise, a little bit of yoga, meditation, those are actually paramount for working through my through my mental illness and getting off the alcohol. Again, like this is a fake beer, and it does a great job of tricking me because I still enjoy the taste of beer. But I think that was the biggest thing, was kicking the alcohol. That really helped me. Yeah. This one's for my son. Every morning when I wake up, I hear you calling out my name, saying, Daddy, won't you come get me in my favorite Monkey Marv? Would you like some Cheerios? Maybe some scrambled eggs and toast. Be sure to eat everything on your plate, because you need your energy. And if the sun don't shine, everything's alright. We'll spend the day inside. You run, I'll hide. After breakfast, put some clothes on. We'll tie the laces on your Superman high tops. Out the door and to the park we go, with nothing but fun in store. Fill your pockets with the stones we find along our merry way. We'll throw them up and down that big red slide, anything to see you smile. And if the sun don't shine, everything's alright. We'll spend the day inside. You run, I'll hide. It's days like these I remember why. Well, I was put here to live out this life. It's you, the reason why. Every day, every night, and every moment of our life. The sun don't shine, everything's alright. We'll spend the day inside. You run, I'll hide. And if the sun don't shine, yeah, everything's alright. We'll spend the day inside. You run, I'll hide. Later on into the evening, we'll clean you up and get you into your PJs. Read the story of your choice while you nestle up into my arms. Lay you down into your bed. We'll tuck you in and give a great big hug and kiss. Say good night and that I love you more than you will ever know.
You have a very creative mind, obviously. Otherwise, we wouldn't be sitting here talking.
Yeah.
But between your solo, the rock and roll thing, and now the choir, what's going on after this? Have you got plans for down the road, or are you just going to kind of
Great question.
take this as long as it'll ride, and then wait to see what falls from the gods?
Yeah, usually I kind of just go with the flow. And so before I played live all the time, I taught for years. So, and I do have a pattern of just beating things to death. So, because I taught for years and I taught so much. I had, they'd have 50 students on the go at a time. And by the end of teaching, I was starting to get a little cranky. I get a little jaded, and I definitely got out when I should have. Yeah. But because I was starting to beat it to death, kind of a thing. Yeah. I was losing my patience for it. And then that happened again with music too. I beat the gigging to death until I hated it. So I hope that doesn't happen with the choir. This is what I'm hoping, okay? Because this choir is so joyful and so lovely, and is bringing so many people together in this great community. So like, here's the hoping that that doesn't happen. I'm pretty sure it won't, because this is a very different adventure, and it involves so many more people, and there's just so much energy around it. I think this is it for a long time. Yeah. For sure. Yeah. I could picture myself being on this stage, or on a choir stage, leading choirs for a long time.
Awesome. Well, I must say it has been one heck of a great pleasure to finally be able to catch up to you, because we have been trying to do this for a little while, and we've been playing tag and everybody. We finally got our opportunity to sit down and chat, and it has been a sheer pleasure.
I was ready to just keep blabbing too.
Oh yeah, well that's the good thing about these interviews. Just let them keep rolling. But no, it has been a sheer pleasure chatting and catching up with you again, Brett. It's been a while. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome.
Every morning when I wake.
At Kawartha Dairy, it's been 80 years of fresh, delicious dairy products and 80 years of incredible memories. We've come a long way since 1937, and it's all thanks to our amazing customers. Thank you, Ontario. Here's to 80 more years.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media. This is Rogers TV. Barrie.
Through United Way, I did a self-esteem course, training for peer support, and now I volunteer. It's a lesson that comes from the nature of doing work with the United Way that gives me a new lease on my life.